time that's waiting for no one today. And we welcome on the stage our next speaker who will be sharing with us on making DOOH work for media owners and brands. How? Well, our next speaker is going to take the session forward. Joining us is an OAH business advisor and entrepreneur from the UK to make his presentation. Please put your hands together and welcome on the stage Mr. Matthew Dearden. A huge round of applause. Good afternoon, welcome.
Thank you very much. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you very much for having me. I wanted to start, given that this is the Outdoor Advertising Convention, with a piece of advertising, which I think is brilliant. I think it manages to combine into one single image the brand idea, communicated with clarity and simplicity. We all know which brand it's for without ever saying so. And I think it's important as we remember the industrial side of our industry, developing the sites and the technology and so on, which I will also be talking about, that we are an advertising business and we're here to build brands, and this is at the heart of it. So I thought I should introduce myself. I'm from the UK. I started years ago studying astrophysics, which turned out to be completely useless for the rest of my life. So then I was a brand manager at Procter & Gamble. I had a decade working in telecoms. I left as I ran the home phone business, and I was marketing director at British Telecommunications. So having been the client for 13 years, I then moved over to become a media owner. I became chief executive of Clear Channel UK, and then president of Clear Channel Europe. And now you may know Clear Channel in India is a separate organization, but these are part of the global Clear Channel organization. And what interested me, what I want to talk a little bit about today, is from my time as a client, then when I went from being a marketing and commercial guy to a media owner, all my marketing friends asked me why I had gone to the dark side. Why would I go and be a media owner? So I want to talk a little bit today about how we help everybody win on both sides, and there is no dark side. So when I was at Clear Channel Outdoor, while I was running the European business, I became president of FEPE, the Global Association for Out-of-Home Media Owners. FEPE's job is to inspire others in the industry. And I'd encourage, if you haven't already, to engage with FEPE. It's a very useful way to learn and to share and to meet friends. And most recently, I'm now working independently in various advisory capacities, entrepreneurial and startup. So it's a pleasure to be here today. As I said, I want to talk about how we win, how we sustain growth in a digital world. But I think you only win when you win together. In the short term, for sure, you can win while your client loses. But your client is not that dumb. So in the long term, we only win when we win together, which is how I wanted to focus today. So I mentioned FEPE, our global association. And I share with you here the 4 pillars that I set out for FEPE to grow out of home as an industry. How do we make our case? Tell the story for out of home so that advertisers and agencies want to use the out of home medium. How do we take the digital revolution out of home, digitizing our sites, which we've seen a lot about? Reclaiming our creative crown. Certainly in a lot of countries, 10, 20 years ago, out of home was the medium that creatives wanted to make their name in. Now it's very often social or online or TV, and out of home has a great case to make. And make it easy to plan, buy, and deliver. Now, Naren spoke very wisely earlier about programmatic, so I will not be touching on the last one, but I will touch on each of the first 3 that we talked about. And I want to start by saying, how do we make our case in a digital world? I've lost a slide somewhere. Here we go. So I want to talk briefly about what I hope you all know, but the excitement and belief I have in our medium. This is a medium that is able to deliver the right people in the right place and at the right time. We're the only industry that loves traffic jams and congestion, and there is plenty of that and more going on all around the world. We're able to get people at natural waiting times and in high-frequency urban life, and in particular, at times of key decision-making, whether they're out shopping, whatever they're doing to get the right context. And I emphasize context. When you look at what has gone wrong with online, a lot of online publishers who are now losing money, they're losing money because they simply sell the naked eyeball or the audience impact without getting to charge any kind of premium for the context in which it is. So if I'm buying a car, I ought to be worth more to the advertiser on a car website than a general news website. But so many online publishers have given away the power of context for free by just doing real-time bidding in an open exchange. So I'm a big fan of programmatic trading in online, and I'm a big fan of bringing it to outdoor. But I'm not a big fan of just copying some of the way it's been done, and this is why, the power of context. So I want to urge you to keep the value of the context in your location for where your audience is. What is also going for us is that we're an urbanizing world. Already half of humanity lives in cities, and that will be 60% by the end of the next decade. And we're an urban medium. And as we saw earlier on, every decade, people in cities spend more time out of home. So we have a naturally growing audience, which would be the envy of most other media. And finally, most media are deeply threatened by the structural changes. Technology is killing most traditional media business models. Mobile is a threat, and data is going to the agencies. But out-of-home benefits from all of these. Digital is a huge upside for out-of-home, done right. There is a vast potential in mobile. Mobile is the fastest growing medium in the world, but today it is being done wrong. Today is a lot like this. The mobile is quite an intimate and personal device. It is your personal computing device, but it is a lot of aggressive offers and deals and so on, which is not the right way to use mobile advertising. Consumers don't accept that intrusion. However, outdoor advertising, somebody rightly said earlier today, is an awareness medium. And the natural first reaction of a consumer when they like an outdoor ad is to reach for their mobile phone, for their cell phone. And so this is the natural place to engage. Mobile is our friend, and we need to do more to link out of home with mobile. And finally, the data that we can gather helps better targeting, better proof of return. Now that's all in the head, but ultimately advertising works by changing people's hearts and emotions. And out of home is hugely powerful in the way it lets creative change hearts and emotions. So I want to do a quick experiment here. So forgive me, I do not know India well, but I'm going to take a guess. Could you wave your hand in the air if you are married? Everybody who's married, could you put your hand in the air? Not many, oh, more, thank you. Anybody else who's married? Okay, keep your hand in the air. Keep your hand in the air if when you got married you did it in private, with nobody there except you and your spouse. So did anybody get married in complete private? I think I see one hand, but no, almost nobody got married in complete private. And I think this is, the reason we do that is to celebrate our connection with each other, to build the fabric of our society with our family and our friends, but also the promise that I made to my wife when I married her is so much more important because her family, my family, our friends saw that promise. And I think that is the promise that brands make when they advertise in public. We know as consumers that when a brand has the confidence to make a big public promise, that is more powerful, and they're going to be easier to hold to that promise than with a series of over-targeted online ads. So I think the emotional impact of the power of the public promise is hard to overstate. And we expect the same of our politicians. This is why politics and justice are held in public as well. The public promise is critical. And I want to go back to the way we change those hearts is through creative. So I just wanted to share some examples of what I think is fantastic creative and looking powerful and bold regardless of the way we just do it. Out of home gives you a great place for this public promise for the brand. I think these are all really powerful brand statements that bring the idea of the brand to life. Now, out of home is most famous as a brand builder. It's also proving that it's increasingly able to do short-term activation. I really love this example from France of showing how they use the power of context of the location to drive footfall to McDonald's in a really compelling way. So I've argued so far that out of home is a powerful medium with a good structural advantage, with the changes in the world will make us even stronger, with the right power to influence consumers' minds and hearts. So the question is, does it work? Does it work for brands? So what I want to do is share with you a bit of work from this guy, Les Binnett. So Les has been working in London advertising now for 3 decades. He's one of the most admired people on working, does advertising actually work? So he looked at nearly 1,000 different case studies that had been submitted to the Institute of the Practitioners of Advertising, the IPA, who have the most prestigious awards in the UK. And these awards are based on, did it work? Did it build business for the brand? Look at over 700 brands in 83 categories and say, well, what worked? Effectiveness meaning profit. And he found the ingredients for what builds profit in the short term and the long term. Now, it'll be no surprise that it's good reading for us. So he starts by saying what I think we all know. Advertising works in 2 ways. The big, easy one to measure is the short-term growth in sales. People see an ad, they will buy a little bit more. But we also all know it declines very quickly. In the longer run, the brand building effect is there for much longer. So a good advertising campaign combines these two together. So over time, the brand grows as well as getting the sales uplift. Now, what I think is very interesting I'm a big fan of online media, but I think it is often sold wrong and bought wrong. And the reason for that is on online media, it is very easy to measure the short-term sales uplift. This is really easy to measure. And clients really appreciate an easy proof of return. And guess what? It's big. In the first 2 or 3 weeks after you do an online campaign, it's easy to measure a big uplift. That looks fantastic. But what the online media owners do not shout about is how fast it dies away. And actually, the importance in the growth of the brand over time, the bigger growth comes from the brand building, where out-of-home particularly excels. So what Binet showed, he looked across all these 996 award-winning campaigns to say, what is the right mix of long-term brand building and short-term sales driving? And he showed again and again, you got the biggest profit impact when 60% of the budget was on brand and 40% was on short-term sales activation. You have to have both, but that was the right mix. So out-of-home clearly has a role. Binet demonstrated that growing the brand fame is the critical factor, the fame of the brand. And you can see that in campaigns where outdoor was not used, only about 15% of campaigns achieved a real fame uplift. That more than doubled when outdoor was used. So looking in the really clear control case, out-of-home more than doubles the fame effect for a campaign. And in fact, TV and out-of-home were the two best media for creating fame in a brand. So that long-term growth, it shows that out-of-home is one of the winning media and more than doubles the effectiveness of a campaign. But also, and this is where it can be harder to prove to a client, on these 996 campaigns, Binet proved a profit effect. So you'll see where they did not use out-of-home, typically 20% of campaigns actually paid out, and the uplift was nearly 30% where out-of-home was used. So index over 120, the use of out-of-home is driving profit as well as long-term fame and brand growth. So having started by arguing that there is a big impact on the consumer's heart and mind, I think we're also demonstrating there is a big impact on the client's profit and their bottom line. Now, ultimately, the judge of that should be the client, not us as the media owner. So let's have a look. These are forecasts from the Peter J. Solomon Company. They're global forecasts over 5 years for what is the CAGR growth in different media. So look, over here we see magazines declining 2.6, newspapers down a point, radio up nearly 5, that's good, mobile up 25, desktop online actually in decline. So we have passed peak online. People on their laptop and their desktop, it's going down, mostly to mobile. And TV up 4 or 5%. Actually, that growth is largely driven by streaming new content. So these are the traditional media. You'll see most traditional media holding steady, declining, slow growth. Mobile is growing very fast. But what we see is out-of-home is forecast to grow at about 5% globally. I think we had 4 point something from PwC earlier, but a close match. So this, for me, is advertisers voting with their wallets, that this argument is true. When an advertiser spends more on out-of-home, it grows their profit. That's why they do it. And that's why it's second only to mobile, why I think there is a natural fit from a consumer behavior and a media planning point of view to put mobile and out-of-home together, and why there is a compelling business reason for us as outdoor people to put mobile together with our product. It is the fast growth medium, it is the rocket that we should be attaching ourselves to. So that's why I think we should all be so excited to be working out of home. Rajiv asked me to talk particularly about digital, so I would like to touch on that. And I have 10 personal learnings that I will share with you very quickly. Now, where did I get these learnings from? Well, I had a laboratory called Europe. I was responsible for running Clear Channel's business in 19 different countries across Europe. And when I joined, digital was very early. For example, when I took over the UK business, about 3% of our revenue was from digital. Last year, it was about 55%. So we went from a very, very small basis of digital through very fast growth. And we learned a lot, and a lot of different countries did it in very different ways. So I had the privilege of looking at what different management teams had done in different countries and really seeing what worked and what didn't work. And what I found is every country has a slightly different culture, slightly different expectations of advertising. But underneath all of that, there were some pretty common rules for what works and what does not work in digital out of home. So I'd like to share some of those with you today. I'm going to start by talking about the evolution of out of home. So this is one of my favorite sites in the UK on the main road in from Heathrow Airport to London. I think it's looking stunning with Burberry there. Very often, most countries start their digital development with super premium or with spectacular digital billboards. That's often where development starts. It's easiest to justify client spending there. Very often, you then go on to places where you have a captive pedestrian audience, so maybe a shopping mall, an airport, a metro or underground line, a railway. So places where you have a captive pedestrian audience is where countries go second. People often explore some kind of ambient media, whether it's ATMs or in gas stations. That doesn't usually work so well. The next thing that does work, one of Dearden's digital billboards, these typically do work when they're done right. And usually the last place to digitize is roadside 2 square meters. So this is an LCD panel like the ones we used in the UK, but actually this is in Australia. And we have learned how to make these work, but it is usually the last environment to go. So that's a typical sequence we see in country after country. So before we get into the 10 steps, I wanted to share some examples of specific digital advertising. Sorry, wrong sequence. So there are 3 buckets to these 10 steps that I want you to think about. The first is your mindset and strategy. The second is making sure that while you're winning, your customer is winning. And the third is how you actually do it, the detail of execution and optimization. Or I like to think about it as thinking right, serving right, and doing it right. And so we'll talk through those. And as we get into it, I'm going to share some examples of digital executions. This one was from Stockholm in Sweden. As the train comes in, you get the sense of the blast of air from the front of the train. And you've got the real-time sensor showing the model's hair moving around. It massively drives engagement. This was for a hair care brand. This is one that we ran in London. This is in Piccadilly Circus, our equivalent of Times Square. And you'll see that we had it set up so we had real-time transponders. As a British Airways plane went overhead into Heathrow, we were able to know that it was there, know how high the clouds were so that it was visible, which flight it was, and then serve real-time data. So if BA wanted, they could have served the price of a seat on that plane, for example, which is very powerful integration. The next one was not one of ours. It's a great campaign. So this one, what you may need to know is that the man you'll see in the box is a man called Gary Lineker. He was a very famous captain of the England football team and a very famous commentator for the BBC on football. So a very, very well-known face and name. There he is. And you'll see he's promoting the Walker's brand, which is PepsiCo. It's Frito-Lay in most countries. So what I love about this one is it's so engaging. People love it. People loved it in the streets. It got massive play on social media and PR. Technically, it was dead simple. We worked directly with the creative agency to integrate their idea into our setup. But it was hugely powerful, compelling, creative. And I'll show one final example that was not us. This was a great production company called Grand Visual using a JC2Co bus shelter.
privilege for all who can witness this. I am close to divine. Know the moment is mine, the moment of sign. I sprint. To all the squares that ask around, we getting it. My skills pay me. Trying to get a million, baby, with an adopted flow that God gave me. You know, tell whoever runners that they spot is temporary till I think I got that one. Tell Miss I'm on my wealth tip. So when we cash out soon, I'm just investing.
I'm telling you, this is how it works, man. There's a little camera right here.
And again, I love it because the technology is quite simple. The technology has been around for a while. But the power of the creative idea, it's back to one of my opening thoughts about engaging hearts and minds. It really worked for the brand. So that was fantastic. Now, I love all of those. And I think they do show the power of out of home. But I partly share them with you to set up one of the things it's easy to go wrong with digital out of home. So here's the first of my 10 rules. So the first is to forget everything you think you know. We're all here because we're experts in out-of-home advertising. But what I've seen again and again and again is that if we come to digital like out-of-home advertising people, and we treat a digital board in the same way that we would a scroller, then we don't make any extra money. The people who make extra money are the screen manufacturers. If we come to it as a new medium, a new digital medium, then there's more money coming in. Naren showed exactly the point with Australia earlier on. So forget everything we think we know as out-of-home people. So some of the most popular mistakes, which I was just guilty of, are these one-off executions. Look, they are wonderful for making people smile and laugh. They are wonderful for getting marketing directors and media planners to think differently. And I'm really glad we did all of those. But the profit on all of those between them was almost nothing. So they're really good ways to break the ice and get people to think about out-of-home differently, but they don't scale. And if we think of them in that way, it doesn't get to where we need to. I want to encourage you to think of it as a new, different premium medium. I want you to think of it as a natural partner for mobile. And ultimately, I'd love us to have a digital mindset. I want us to think as we would if we worked at Facebook or Google or one of the other online companies, maybe somebody more innovative, where we're more nimble and really focused on how do we break the rules of out-of-home in a positive way with digital. I'm a big believer in classic, and I'm a big believer in digital, and we need to make sure we do digital differently. The second rule for me is it's not about the screen. I've seen so many people focus on putting all their money and focus on building a new screen, which is really important. But I think there's a real shift in the role of IT behind that. So in the old days, IT was just a cost. It ran our email or whatever, and you just keep it cheap and in the back office. But now, as we saw earlier on, the right content management system, the right connectivity, the right availability, the right dynamic pricing tools, the right dynamic data tools, all of these are really the monetization engine. So putting up the screen as an asset is pointless without the monetization. So I want to encourage you to think I'm a huge fan of the screens, but how do we monetize and what systems do we put behind it? And it's all about the customer. I have heard media owners say, well, if I build it, they will come. I've heard media owners say, but I spent so many million on this, you have to buy it and you have to pay that price. And I've heard media owners say, I'm 5 years ahead of the market. And of course, none of those things ever work. I recommend being half a step ahead of the market. If you're too far ahead, the buyers will not come with you. And if we're focusing on what we have spent and we have done, we're not creating value for the customer. I'm sure all of you are sitting there thinking, of course, this is obvious, but I share them with you because they're mistakes I've seen good teams make in real life. And the final one on strategy is to use the right money. Most of us as media owners have limited shareholder capital. We're looking there thinking, well, I can't build all the screens I want to because my shareholders won't fund it and their money is expensive. And what I found is there's a lot of third-party money that wants to build screens. It's cheaper, it's more plentiful, it means you can move quicker and bigger and get into the revolution as you want to. So there are lots of different ways that can be funded. So then moving on to serving right, winning with your customer. Being brave on price. The biggest mistake I've seen when people have been pricing this is to think about their best classic asset. Maybe it's their best backlit billboard or something like that. And then thinking, maybe I can charge 20% more, maybe 50, maybe 100% more. And that has always proved to be a mistake. This is a medium where in country after country after country, I have found that the typical price charged for digital out of home is 5 to 10 times a slot on classic. Usually about 6 times has been the average. And that will come down over time. But I think if you are not able to be brave on price, you're not thinking differently enough about what is the product for your customer and creating value for them in the different ways. I see some of you agree, so I thank you for that. Now, what it does mean is you have to be prepared to be glass half full. By this I mean, I would rather have a high price and only half my inventory sold than have a lower price and have it fully sold. Because this way I can grow. When more demand comes in, I can grow. And when my client comes in at the last minute saying, have you got a spot in 5 minutes? Sure, I have. Of course I have, and here is the price. It gives you the power. So please, I would urge you, it's very hard to put a price up, so start high when you launch this new, different premium medium. And if you're going to be brave on price, you have to deliver the value. You have to really be fair with your client. So, for example, I don't like a loop in digital out-of-home. Personally, what I saw in the UK was you would still run a standard loop of 6 ads for 2 weeks, which is a waste of the potential. But even worse, some people would sell a loop of 6, but run a loop of 8. And that ultimately the clients will not tolerate. We have to over-deliver, and we have to enable the smarter use that digital out-of-home can achieve for the client. I'm also a big believer in moving to selling what the customer needs. Today, most of us will sell our customer a spot on a billboard or a spot on a bus shelter. But actually, they don't want that. They want awareness, or phone calls, or clicks, or a particular cover build. And if we can move to selling them what they want, they will pay more for it. But also what it means is we can have our different order types. What I found in our UK business, for example, is we would sell to a bank Monday morning because that's the only time people swap accounts. We would sell coffee chains in the morning. We would sell drive time radio in the afternoon. We would sell to online retailers our cheapest inventory whenever there was nothing else running. And by having clever software that optimizes all of these different order types, we could maximize our yield. Then moving into execution, you just saw a real expert on LED screens, so I cannot be able to compare on those. But what I have seen out-of-home executives do is over-specify. They want a screen that will last 15 years. The market will be different in 15 years. They want a screen with every kind of interaction. Guess what? I've learned the hard way. Consumers don't want to stand in the street waving at an advertising screen. The mobile is the way to get interaction. They build a beautiful screen, a really highly specified screen, and then build it on an ugly piece of industrial metal, whereas this should be a beautiful frame for a beautiful brand. So I think a great showcase with the right tech vendors at the right price. So not over-speccing, not under-speccing, recognizing what people want to do in public versus in private. Then I talked earlier about helping our clients really achieve value. We have to educate them to how do you make the most of the creative. The creative agencies have not used this new medium before. It's our job to show them how. As Dearden said earlier on, this isn't a TV ad. Running full motion video actually gets less attention. These gentle contrast, gentle animations work much better, and the dynamic use of data works a lot better. And with great media planning, if we have it just always on or at fixed times, the brand isn't getting the value it needs. We should be able to use, I think we had examples earlier, I've run ads based on, it's hot, we're going to run ads for ice cream. It's cold, we run ads to keep your car safe in the cold. We've run ads where you have the radio station show what they're playing right now. Lots of different ways of triggering the right campaign and the right media plan. So these are my 10 steps. Because I don't want to overrun, I've done it very quickly. I'm very happy to talk in more detail if you'd like to afterwards. I'm going to pick up on the last two, helping our clients win with the creative and with the media planning. And my friends at Kinetics have everyone has a framework, but I borrowed Kinetics' framework for how they are doing that, their last two, their magic 4 Rs. How do you make a digital campaign reactive, real-time, relevant, and rewarding, or rewarding, as it says here? And we've got one example of each of these. So a reactive campaign would be, as a big news story breaks, a news brand wants to get out there and cover the story, usually in quite a witty way. A real-time campaign, this is one several of us have run, where you can put, this is the example I just gave actually, a radio station showing what they're playing right now, or the DJ that's playing, works particularly well at drive time. The relevance of this one is based on, it says thermal, so the temperature and the day of the week. And finally, rewarding. I think this is quite important. All advertising has to be with the consent of the consumer. So ultimately, there has to be a value exchange with the consumer. So this works really well. Santander Spanish Bank was sponsoring a bike hire scheme. So they're all also able to add value to the customer by showing where the bikes are available. So these are just 4 quick examples of my last 2 rules, how you help clients make creative work and help clients make the media planning work. So to come back to where we started, I think this is a really powerful medium. It has to be about the creative. You change minds by changing hearts, so I think that is so important. We have today what is a fabulous medium that is the envy of most traditional media. There is fundamental change going on in the media landscape, and that change is almost all going in our favor. So we have a great future ahead of us. I think our best days are ahead. Digital has many pitfalls. It is very easy to get digital wrong. I have seen teams get it badly wrong. But done right, it is a huge upside for us. And if we do that right and help our clients win, then they are very happy to pay the premium that digital demands because they are winning with us. So our best days are ahead. That's how we do sustain growth, by winning together with our clients. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I hope to talk to you later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Well, you gave us the balanced approach, thinking, feeling, and doing. Well, we've got the questions lined up. There are 3 questions that have been chosen already. And to tell us which 3 questions, please put your hands together as we welcome on the stage Mr. Suresh Balakrishna. Welcome, sir. CEO, Kinetic Worldwide for India, South Asia, Middle East. We can see you've got the iPad ready. The questions are ready. And this is going to be exciting.
The plug at the end for Kinetic was not organized. I'm meeting him for the first time. Right? Thanks, Matthew. I think I've been here right from the morning, and I can tell you it's been one of the best sessions that we've had from the morning. At least that's clearly what I felt. I think some of the things that you said were home truths, but I think we need to keep telling ourselves that again and again. The Grow Together one, the one you started with, I think was perfect. I think we have to grow along with the brands and along with our customers. What I liked about it was where you said that mobile and technology might be competitors to other mediums, but they're enablers for the out-of-home medium. I think that was a very good thought. We like that, at least I like that a lot. I also like the bit where you said that out-of-home, and this was the Les Binet report, I've also gone through it, where you said that out-of-home helps build brands, helps branding, helps drive effectiveness, even helps drive profitability. I think that's music to our ears, to each one of us in this room. And of course, how to use digital media. I think the 10 rules that you told us about how we can use digital media and what are the do's and don'ts, every slide of yours had some learning on it. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
You've got the maximum number of questions as well since we started this morning. Right? I had to go through 42 questions to decide on 3 questions. So I have decided to ask 4 from an agency. I usually don't stick to the brief. So decided to ask you 4 questions. The first one is from Parul Chadda, and she asks, what are the latest global trends in integration of mobile handset with the digital out-of-home medium? Do you have any examples, or can you share some experiences that you had of integrating the mobile handset with digital out-of-home?
Yes, we did a lot on that. So there's been a lot of discussion over the years about the use of Bluetooth beacons, for example, are very fashionable. Apple have their own way of doing it, and Google have theirs. At one point, I was the proud owner of the world record largest ever installation of NFC tags for advertising purposes. So what I have to say to you is, from a long-term point of view, from helping our media work together, the honest truth is that I don't really believe in those technologies. Where they could be very effective, for example, the reason we did the NFC tags is in the UK, mobile advertising was very fashionable, and in their hearts, most marketing directors didn't know what to do about mobile advertising. So we could go and say, well, you've got a problem with mobile advertising. Well, here's how you do it. You drive interest with out-of-home, they touch the NFC tag, and then they go into your mobile. And actually, as Naren showed earlier on, it is the case that out-of-home is the most powerful driver of mobile search. So it is a good area for us. But the reason we did the NFC tags is not because consumers want to get out their phone and walk up to a device and do that. It's because it was a way to go and pitch the medium to buyers and to marketing directors. So I'm a big fan of those technologies to open the door and have the conversation. But the natural consumer response is simply to reach for their phone and then search. And I think there are lots of technical reasons, which I can go into later, why I think the beacons will not be the right one. I think there's so much location awareness already built into a mobile phone. Search is so powerful. Visual search is getting integrated into search apps, into mobile devices. So I think the key for your brand to make that linkage work is to make sure that your brand is optimized for search, your ads are optimized for search. It could be as simple as when you have a new piece of creative, you make sure that you upload it into Google's image search engine so that when consumers photograph and search, it finds it straight away. It's not particularly sophisticated technology at the front end, it's all in the back in the search engine. So my personal view is I'm a consumer marketer, you start with the consumer and you say that search is how they'll get there and you make your brand easy to search for, and that is actually the best link with out of home.
The next question is from a gentleman called Nishant Kumar. He says, would DOOH in future also, digital out of home, will also serve as a point of sale touch point?
Yes, it can. For example, we've done some concepts where we take it to extreme and we say, well, the high street in the main shopping street of a capital city is the most expensive place to have a shop. So we've talked to some retailers about don't try and rent retail premises on the street in your capital city. Rent one of our bus stations and we can put in all the ability to buy. There have been some live examples. There was one in Korea where Tesco were able to give people, they put up a whole virtual shelf and then people could scan the QR code for the products they want, waiting for them by the time they get home. We did the same with a book retailer in Copenhagen. It is possible. I think the limiting factor is logistics, how fast and reliably retailers can deliver, although that's improving, and consumer behavior. It comes back to, are people ready to stand at a poster and shop? I'm not sure they are yet. It comes back to my belief that mobile is the natural link, so to the previous question. And a way you can do that is what we have done in the past is to retarget with mobile. You often know from outdoor, this is where beacons can be useful, is to geofence somebody. And you know where they've been, which posters they've seen. And it's very, very powerful then to reserve them with ads for the posters they've seen. It's very profitable for you guys, and it's very powerful for the brand, as that has a big consumer effect that can be proven at a retail level. So again, I come back to, I think that mobile is the right mechanism to fulfill that potential.
Okay, here's a question. Manoj asks, and I'm not going to read out the question, but I'll tell you the essence of the question. He's a gentleman who does not like media agencies and out-of-home agencies. So he's asked, very long-winded question where he's not said very complimentary things about agencies, but I'll reframe it. He has said, are agencies facilitators or destroyers of value between the media owner and the brand? That's his question.
Well, look, one of the last things I did when I was a marketing director, I was spending about $250 million a year on media. And I was quite unhappy with the agency, and I fired Publicis and moved the business into Maxus in Group M in WPP. And at that time, I had no idea that 6 months later I was going to be a media owner. So can you imagine in my first week as a media owner, my emotions when I went into Maxus, fantastic. My emotions when I went into Starcom MediaVest, I was a little bit nervous. But I will give them great credit that they treated me very professionally and were always very good about it. And the reason I raise the story is my experience is, as a client and as a media owner, you see very different sides of media agencies. And they talk to you very differently, they tell you very different things, and you form a very different worldview about what agencies do and what are they good at. With both of those hats on, I would say, are they useful facilitators or do they destroy value? Both. There are some agencies who are simply there to aggregate demand, to put their foot on the windpipe of the media owner, and to extract a rebate. Does that add value to anybody? No. So in the short term, those agencies will make a lot of money. In the long term, they will cease to exist. The media owners won't do that forever. The clients get bored of that. There are some agencies we all know do that. On the other hand, the best agencies, I think, add a vast amount of value. The best agencies buy smartly, create value in their buying pricing for both the client and for the media owner, and they plan brilliantly. And a real shift for me, actually when I appointed Maxus, I moved from treating my creative agency as my lead partner to using my media agency as my lead partner because of their ability to think, to plan, to be good strategic creative partners for how I build my brand. So I honestly believe, I was pretty blunt, the worst media agencies are awful. The best media agencies, I think, are fantastic and add a vast amount of value. I think that the tragedy is that they've stopped charging clients for their service. They ought to be charging a fee for brilliant creative media strategy and planning. In practice, under-recover costs on that, which means they have to become traders and do a bit of the dirty work in the trading book. But the best agencies, I think, are wizards who add a lot of value to the industry, and we need to make sure they thrive.
I was sweating for some time there.
Both are true.
Okay, the last and the fourth question here is, do you think the Indian out-of-home industry has arrived at the tipping point where if we don't realize the potential of digital out-of-home and make changes quickly, we are going to perish, or we're not going to be, keeping pace with the times?
So I'm not an expert in India, but I will share what I have seen in many, many other countries. I think if you rush into digital too fast and get it wrong, you will regret it. But if you don't do it at all, you will regret that too. My personal view would be a question that somebody asked earlier on today. You have to get some kind of audience measurement and common metric. Because without any kind of common metric or audience measurement, it's very hard for the clients and the agencies to build trust in the medium. So I think that is a hygiene factor, a fundamental building block that you have to put in place. I then do believe in digital. I think there is great potential in India for digital. I would encourage you to think about what is the right sequence. It's often about what is the buyer ready for rather than what are you ready to build, so be only half a step ahead of your buyer, and educate yourselves and your buyers to treat it differently. If you all pile in as fast as you can, because you're looking over your shoulder, she's doing it, he's doing it, so I better move fast too, and you treat it like a really good backlit or a really big scroller, you'll wish you'd saved your capital. So I think get the basics right on a metrics and audience measurement, and then do it thoughtfully, working with your buyers to educate people on how to use it differently, then they will be happy to pay the premium, and it's a great way forward for India.
Thank you, Matthew. You now need to choose the best question. I'll just give you a quick refresher. The first one was about the point of sale. The second was about integrating mobile with digital out of home. The third was about the role of advertising media agencies. And the last one is about Indian out-of-home industry. Which one would you choose?
You torture me because you've chosen 4 great questions. I assume I'm not allowed to split, so I'm going to go for the brave, provocative question about the media agencies.
Why did I feel he would choose that one right in the beginning? I sort of felt he would choose that one. Okay, this question has been asked by Manoj Keshavan. Is he there? Arabian Outdoor, I think he's from Dubai.
Hey, that was fun. Thank you. Fantastic. And it's great that it happens to be
Once
Kinetics that
again.
I'm partnered with having played.
A huge round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen.
Well done, well done.
Brave enough to ask the question, and of course, deserving of the prize. Alak Advertising and Publicity, 10,000 rupees. Congratulations. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you.